Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are studying or starting in the book of Hosea or Hosea. It's actually, depending on how you want to pronounce the name, it is actually spelled Hosea. So Hosea or Hosea. Okay. Um, This is an interesting book because, um, and I can't think about a lot of people today who want to call themselves prophets. So the kind of badge of honor, pride for honor, I would say. You have a lot of people who call themselves prophet, prophetess, apostles, okay, chief apostles, master prophets, all of the other kind of stuff. What is going to be interesting about this book is, and when we go through some of the criteria that God did, well, not criteria, but some of the, one of the, let me put it this way, one of the signs or what God would do with a prophet is to illustrate what he is saying to them. Now, when we come to Ezekiel, you will see, I want to say one of the, Ezekiel was called or commanded by God to lay on one side for so many days and then turn around and lay on his other side for so many days. He was he was also commanded by God to, when he was ordered to make his food so the fuel that it was used to cook his food, it was human waste, bowels. And Igor was like, Lord, please, come on. Then God said, okay, you can use like animal bowels, okay. Hosea is one of God's going to tell him to marry a prostitute. So that is going to be interesting, okay. That is going to be interesting. Now, um, let's bring this up so we could see. You could judge for yourself how to pronounce that name. Hosea or Hosea, um, and probably um, um, a Hebrew pronunciation. Okay, I'm not for sure how you pronounce that, Hosea or Hosea. Okay, now as we have been doing with the chronological order of the books because of the time, my purpose is also to show you what fits the prophetic voice of the time. And Hosea is, uh, as you can see, right about 753 BC. Now, as you have noticed, we have been following the minor prophets. Again, I don't like that designation. That is a man, scholars commentation, um, that what they in the writings of the prophet, you have what's called the major prophets and the minor prophets. So there's about four major prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Those are considered the major prophets. I didn't mention Lamentations because Lamentations is usually attached to Jeremiah. But then the other minor prophets, okay, um, and the problem with the minor prophets, I mean, again, so it's not a bad thing what they've done, but when you study the minor prophets, sometimes I think you can get, if you're not careful, careful, you get the timeline mixed up. So, like I say, however you wanted to do that, I wanted to do it all together in a chronological order. So that this chart here kind of gives you the writings of the prophets in order. Okay. So as you can see, if you go back, remember we one of our first books, where is it at, that we studied? Wasn't Joel? What's the first one we studied? But I'm trying to go back now. In this here, I know I'm going back too far now. Was it Joel? No, Amos, right? Let me see here. I'm gonna go back. Okay, I know it's not this far back. So as far as now, I told you I will tell you why I'm Obadiah here, which is 853 BC. But I'm going to, I believe that's more close to the um, Babylonian exile time. But we'll get to that there. But as you can see in this chart, they have it one of the first books that is listed. And let's see here. Amos, Joel, the writing of the prophet. So Joel, okay. Okay. So Joel, let's get back down, would be one of the first in terms of timeline of the minor prophets. Okay. Then Amos, then Jonah, and now we're going to study Hosea. Now we're going to study Micah next, and then we'll get into Isaiah. But as you can see, this is the timeline here. Okay, the timeline of why I am studying this the way I am studying this, because I want to get the flavor of the prophecy for the time. So when we come to Hosea, okay, Hosea, Hosea is the last king, Hosea, okay, but right around this time here, that Hosea is believed to be the last king on prophecy or generation of prophecy before the northern kingdom or the king Israel captivity to Assyria. So you remember, and as a matter of timeline, and it's kind of important that we kind of understand this in terms of understanding. So when you read the writing of the prophet, the section of the books, the writing of the prophets, that there have always been prophets or people whom God has called to give his message. For example, you go all the way back to Moses, of course, was the prophet. Noah was the prophet. Abraham was the prophet. King David was the prophet, so forth and so on. Balaam, during the time of Moses, was a prophet. False prophet, but God used him for one moment to give a message. But the writings of the prophets themselves, this section here of the writings of the section that comes with the kings of Israel, okay, both Judah and Israel, are the set of prophecies that begin to warn Israel of their sins, to repent, warn Israel to turn from their sins, to warn Israel of the coming wrath or judgment of God, but also the prophecies concerning God's restoration of Israel in the future. So that's kind of what you see as an outline of the writing of the prophets, that they pretty much follow all of that kind of outline. Okay. So all of the timeline of Israel come to 2 points. One, the let's kind of go back to you have King Saul. So back in, and if you go back to our timeline too, this is kind of neat for us to kind of go over for a moment. Now you go all the way back to, and I can go back to the time of the judges, but when you go back to 1 Samuel, which is the beginning of the first king, you got 1070 BC. So 1,000 years before Christ. Here you got the first king of Israel, who was Saul. All right. So around 1043, right? 1043, Saul becomes king, and then after that, David becomes king around 1003 BC. Okay, and then Solomon after that. So both Saul and then Ishabeth, he was just for um, a little period, but Saul, David, and Solomon, they reigned over Israel. Each reigned over Israel about 40 years, but they reigned over Israel, all of Israel. So then we come to Solomon's son, Rehoboam, and he makes a foolish move that divides the nation. And from Rehoboam's time, which comes to the book of Kings, so First and Second Kings, uh, First and Second Chronicles. So the Chronicles of the kings of Israel and Judah begins this period, a divided nation. Okay, one God, one law in that respect, two different separate kingdoms. So from Rehoboam's time, okay, so when we come down to Rehoboam, okay, here we go. Where you at, Rehoboam? Right around 930 BC. So from 930 BC, you have a period all the way about 320 years of the kings of Israel, their wickedness. Now the writings of the prophets, God is raising up these prophets now to prophesy to these, from generation to generation, to turn from their wicked ways. Okay, and so all of this, the writing of the prophets to turn from their wicked ways, but all of this comes to a head during this last period of time when you have Hosea, which is the prophecy of Hosea, which we get to in a moment, where and then the Babylonian captivity. Now, the Babylonian captivity is where the turn of human events, a complete turn. From this time period on, human history kind of shifts from the Babylonian captivity. Okay, and from there you see Daniel's, Daniel's prophecy, where God gives Nebuchadnezzar the king this vision of a human, right? A human statue. And it's divided into four parts, which represents four major world dominating kingdoms. Now, the Assyrians, as you see here, they were a mighty empire, but they did not rule the world. Babylon ruled the world, and then after that, the Medes and Persians, then the Grecian Empire under Alexander the Great, and then the Roman Empire. They ruled the known world at the time. The history changes from that point. So all of the writings of the prophets are come to this point in time here. Now, so Hosea prophesies he is the last generation that, and his counterpart, which is about 100 years apart, is Jeremiah. When we come to Jeremiah, we're going to come to this period of time where the Babylonian captivity, the death of the entire nation. Well, here, with the king Hosea, who was the evil king, he, where are we at here? We go back to Hosea. Well, he prophesies around. I'm gonna put his timeline up here. So look at this. About 753 BC, he begins to prophesy again of the coming judgment for the northern kingdoms of Israel, right? And then around, where are you at? Around 722. So what, about 25 years, 22 years, something like that? You see Israel's led into captivity here. They are, and then again, so what you have is the entire northern kingdom is kind of taken away, gone. All right. Now again, so when we talk about the writings of the prophets here, that's why I'm kind of going through it at this point, because the writing of you get the prophetic timeline here. All right, the prophetic timeline. So I'm going to start it and probably, no doubt, finish it in the next study. And it says Hosea or Hosea. Okay. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea the son of Beri during the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and of Jeroboam, son of Joash, kings of Israel. So this is what he the kings. Okay, that by the way, this is why we get this timeline too, where we can kind of fit him at this certain timeline. Look at verse 2. Like I said, I'm not going to finish this today, but look at verse 2. It says, when the Lord first spoke to Hosea, he said this to him, go marry a promiscuous wife and have children of promiscuity, for the land has committed blatant acts of promiscuity by abandoning the Lord. Now, so go marry a promiscuous woman, or we call a loose woman, a harlot, a prostitute. And then he says, and have children by her. Now, let me just say this. Under normal circumstances, God would not tell us to marry that way. Okay? Nothing but heartache would come from that. When people marry the wrong person, a person who is not a godly person, nothing but heartaches. And we have it, we cannot even count the times of people, right? You cannot count the times where people who have married the wrong person, been in the wrong kind of relationships with people, it has been nothing but heartache. When you marry a person, a godly person, you will not have that. The Bible tells us over and over again to not marry. Some people even use the term unequally yoked together. I think it's an okay term, even though that scripture was not talking about marriage. I think it fits. For sure, though, when you marry a person that is not a godly person. Okay, that being said, this is the exception to the rule. God tells Hosea to marry a ungodly woman, a harlot, to illustrate his point. So, yeah, when you see a prophet, and remember, prophets were validated by God. They were known to be men of God. And so now you have a man who goes out and marries this promiscuous woman. Everybody's going to say, what's up with that, right? And then his prophecy is going to be, yeah, I'm doing it as a sign to your, okay, to your unfaithfulness to God. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.